Just a few miles from one of the most dangerous waterways on Earth lies an island almost nobody talks about. An island surrounded by warships, oil tankers, sanctions, and silence. From above, it looks like another desert in the Persian Gulf. But hidden inside these mountains are ancient valleys, underground worlds, and people surviving between empires. This is Qeshm Island, Iran's forbidden frontier. And once you see it, you will never look at the Middle East the same way again. Beyond these waters lies a world few outsiders ever witness. A world where ancient traditions still survive beside one of the most militarized waterways on Earth. Where silence feels heavier than noise, and where every cliff, every cave, and every wave carries the weight of history. Most people will never come here. Many do not even know this island exists. But Qeshm has been watching the world for centuries, watching empires rise, watching ships cross these waters, watching history repeat itself again and again. And the deeper we travel into this island, the stranger everything becomes. When most people think about Iran, they think about politics, conflict, headlines, and fear. But beyond the headlines, another Iran exists. An Iran of fishermen, traders, desert storms, and forgotten civilizations. An Iran hidden far away from the cities and far away from the cameras. And nowhere feels more mysterious than Qeshm Island. The largest island in the Persian Gulf, a place surrounded by tension yet somehow untouched by the modern world. For centuries, traders crossed these shores carrying silk, spices, pearls, and stories from distant continents. Portuguese soldiers once built forts here. Ancient sailors once navigated these waters using only the stars above them. Even today, life here moves differently. Slower, quieter, older. The island feels disconnected from time itself. Villages disappear into the desert. Mountains rise from empty landscapes like ruins from another planet. And beneath the surface of this island lies a hidden world that most outsiders never see. A world shaped by survival, isolation, beauty, and silence. But before we explore the island itself, we need to understand why these waters matter so much to the rest of the world. Because Qeshm does not exist beside an ordinary sea. It exists beside one of the most important waterways on Earth. Every single day, massive ships pass beside Qeshm Island, carrying oil, gas, and cargo worth billions of dollars. These ships move through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important waterways on the planet. Nearly a fifth of the world's oil passes through this narrow corridor, which means what happens here affects countries thousands of miles away. A single disruption in these waters can send shockwaves through global markets within hours. And that tension never fully disappears. Warships patrol these seas constantly. Military aircraft cross the skies above. Radar systems watch every movement. The world's superpowers all pay attention to this tiny stretch of water. Yet beside all this pressure, ordinary life continues. Fishermen still leave before sunrise. Children still play near the shore. Old wooden boats still drift across the horizon exactly as they did generations ago. The contrast feels surreal. On one side, global politics and military power. On the other side, silence, tradition, and survival. And standing on the cliffs of Qeshm, you can see both worlds existing at the same time. But the real mystery of this island does not begin in the sea. It begins inside the mountains, because hidden within the island lies a landscape that feels completely disconnected from reality. There are places on Qeshm that do not feel real, places that look less like Earth and more like another planet. The Valley of Stars is one of them. Massive rock formations rise from the desert floor like frozen waves. Sharp cliffs twist into strange shapes carved by millions of years of wind and erosion. But local legends tell a different story. Many believe a star once crashed here from the sky. And when the impact struck the Earth, these strange formations were created. At night, the valley becomes even more unsettling. The wind whistles through the rocks, creating sounds that almost resemble voices. Shadows move strangely across the canyon walls. Silence becomes heavy, and for a moment, it becomes easy to understand why ancient people believed this place was haunted. Scientists explain the valley through geology and erosion, but standing here beneath the stars, logic suddenly feels very small. The island constantly creates this feeling. a feeling that nature here operates differently, more ancient, more mysterious, more alive. And hidden beneath this alien landscape lies another secret deep inside the Earth itself, a place where sunlight disappears completely, and where time loses all meaning. Beneath Qeshm Island lies one of the longest salt cave systems on Earth, a hidden underground world stretching deep beneath the mountains. The entrance itself feels intimidating, dark, narrow, silent. But the deeper you go, the more surreal everything becomes. Salt crystals hang from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. The walls glow beneath artificial light. Water drips slowly through tunnels that may have existed for millions of years. Every footstep echoes endlessly through the darkness. Inside the cave, the outside world disappears completely. No cities, no politics, no noise, only silence, stone, and time. Some parts of the cave feel almost untouched by human presence, as if the Earth protected these chambers from the modern world. The deeper sections become colder, quieter, and more isolated. Even breathing sounds different underground. And after spending enough time inside these tunnels, the island above begins to feel very far away. But above the caves, life on Qeshm continues under very different pressures. Because while nature shaped this island over millions of years, politics and economics continue shaping the lives of the people who live here today. For many outsiders, sanctions are just political discussions on television. But for families living on Qeshm, they shape everyday life. Prices change suddenly. Fuel becomes more expensive. Imported medicine becomes harder to access. Fishing routes become more restricted. Opportunities become limited. And yet, despite all of this, life continues. Markets remain crowded. Tea continues pouring. Families continue gathering every evening. Children continue laughing in the streets. People adapt because survival here has always required resilience. There is a quiet strength on this island. Not dramatic, not loud, just human. Fishermen repair engines by hand because replacing them is difficult. Shopkeepers continue opening stores every morning, despite uncertainty. Entire communities rely on tradition, cooperation, and patience. And somehow, amid all the hardship, the island never loses its warmth. Hospitality remains part of daily life. Strangers are still welcomed. Stories are still shared. Meals are still offered. Because on Qeshm, survival has never only depended on money. It has depended on people. But perhaps the most fascinating traditions on the island belong to the women whose appearance immediately captures the attention of outsiders. Women whose identity has become part of the mystery of southern Iran itself. In parts of Qeshm Island, some women wear traditional face masks known as burqas. But unlike what many outsiders assume, these masks are not simply about hiding identity. They represent culture, history, and belonging. Each design carries its own meaning. Some resemble birds, others resemble ancient warriors. Different villages developed different styles over generations. The tradition has existed here for centuries, and despite globalization, it continues surviving quietly. Watching these women move through the markets of Qeshm feels almost cinematic. The bright fabrics, the desert light, the silence behind the masks, everything feels connected to another era. In many parts of the world, local traditions disappear quickly beneath modern culture, but Qeshm still protects pieces of its past, not as performances for tourists, but as part of everyday life, and that authenticity makes the island feel rare. Because in a rapidly changing world, very few places still hold on to their identity this strongly. Yet long before masks, traditions, and modern politics, another culture once dominated these shores, a culture built entirely around the sea. Before oil transformed the Persian Gulf, the sea was everything. Entire generations survived through fishing, pearl diving, and trade. The waters surrounding Qeshm once connected Africa, India, Persia, and Arabia through ancient trade routes. Pearl divers risked their lives beneath these waters without oxygen tanks or modern equipment. Some never resurfaced. Others returned carrying fortunes hidden inside small white shells. Old wooden dhows still sail across these waters today. Their design has barely changed in centuries. Many older captains still navigate using instinct, weather, and stars instead of modern technology. Watching them feels like looking into the past. The rhythm of life here still follows the sea. Boats leave before sunrise. Nets dry beneath the heat. Storms decide whether families earn money or return home empty-handed. Even now, the ocean controls life on the island. And despite modern development, traces of the old Gulf world still survive here. A world that existed long before oil tankers, military ships, and global politics arrived. But after sunset, the island changes once again. And Qeshm at night becomes something entirely different. When darkness falls over Qeshm, the island transforms completely. The heat slowly disappears, the desert cools, the wind changes direction, and silence spreads across the landscape. Far away from the villages, the night sky becomes overwhelming. Thousands of stars cover the darkness above the island. There are no skyscrapers here, no highways, no city lights destroying the sky. Only darkness, wind, and the sound of distant waves. Some locals believe spirits move through the valleys after midnight. Others simply respect the silence enough not to question it. Walking through the Valley of Stars at night feels deeply unsettling. Every sound feels amplified. Every shadow feels alive. Imagination becomes impossible to control. And yet this isolation also creates beauty, a rare kind of beauty that modern cities can no longer offer. True silence, true darkness, true stillness. Moments like this reveal the real power of Qeshm, not politics, not geography, but atmosphere. The island makes people feel small, and perhaps that is why it stays in the memory of everyone who visits. But the future of Qeshm may soon change everything. Qeshm now stands between two very different futures, one driven by modernization, industry, and development, the other by preservation, tradition, and identity. Tourism slowly increases every year. New roads continue expanding across the island. Ports grow larger. Investors pay closer attention to the region. But every change brings new risks, because what makes Qeshm extraordinary is not luxury or modern entertainment. It is authenticity. The island still feels raw, unpredictable, and real. Entire coastlines remain untouched. Villages still move at the pace of older generations. Nature still dominates the landscape. And in a world becoming increasingly artificial, places like Qeshm become incredibly rare. The question is whether the island can modernize without losing the very thing that makes it unforgettable. Because once authenticity disappears, it rarely returns. And perhaps that is the greatest tension facing Qeshm today. Not military conflict, not politics, but the possibility of becoming ordinary. Most maps reduce places to borders and headlines. But places like Qeshm remind us that reality is always more complicated. Beyond politics, there are people. Beyond conflict, there is culture. Beyond global tension, there are ordinary lives continuing quietly beside history itself. Qeshm exists beside one of the most strategically important waterways on Earth. Yet somehow the island still protects silence, beauty, and mystery. Ancient traditions still survive here. Nature still feels untamed, and time still moves differently. The island does not try to impress the world. It simply exists, quietly, patiently, watching history unfold around it. And maybe that is why Qeshm feels unforgettable, because it refuses to become like everywhere else. In a world obsessed with speed, noise, and attention, Qeshm remains slow, silent, and distant. A reminder that mystery still exists. A reminder that not every place has been fully explained. And perhaps that mystery is exactly what makes this island so powerful. Long before modern borders existed, foreign empires fought for control over these waters. And one of the oldest reminders of that struggle still stands on Qeshm Island today. A Portuguese fort built more than 500 years ago. Its walls overlook the sea like a silent witness from another century. The stones are weathered, cracked, and slowly disappearing beneath the Gulf heat. But the fort still carries the memory of invasion, trade, and power. During the 16th century, the Portuguese Empire controlled key routes across the Indian Ocean, and Qeshm became part of that strategy. These waters meant wealth, control, influence, and empires were willing to fight for them. Today, the fort feels abandoned. Empty corridors echo beneath the sound of wind. Rust covers old cannons facing the sea. Birds circle above broken towers. But standing here, it becomes impossible not to imagine what these shores once looked like. Ships arriving from distant continents, soldiers watching the horizon, merchants carrying silk, spices, and gold. Qeshm has always existed between worlds, between East and West, between isolation and globalization, between survival and conquest. And even now, traces of those ancient struggles remain hidden across the island. But not all of Qeshm's mysteries were built by humans. Some were created by nature itself in ways almost impossible to explain. In the middle of the dry desert landscape, another world suddenly appears, a floating forest growing directly from the sea. The mangrove forests of Qeshm feel almost impossible against the harshness surrounding them. Trees rise from salt water, roots disappear beneath the tides, birds glide silently above narrow waterways, and everything suddenly feels alive again. These forests survive through adaptation. During high tide, the water covers much of the roots completely. During low tide, the mudflats reappear, stretching endlessly toward the horizon. The ecosystem here is fragile but extraordinary. Migratory birds arrive from distant regions every year. Fish hide beneath the roots. Small boats move quietly through the channels like ghosts. For local communities, these forests are more than beautiful landscapes. They are part of survival, part of fishing, part of protection against erosion and storms. And in many ways, the mangroves represent Qeshm itself, resilient, quiet, and constantly adapting to difficult conditions. But perhaps the strangest thing about the island is how quickly beauty can transform into isolation. Because beyond the forests, beyond the villages, and beyond the coastlines lie areas where almost nothing exists at all. Drive far enough into Qeshm and the island begins to feel abandoned. Roads disappear into empty desert. Mountains rise without warning from the horizon. Entire stretches of land remain completely silent for miles. No houses, no traffic, no movement, only wind. The emptiness here feels enormous, almost overwhelming. And that isolation changes the way time feels. Minutes stretch longer, thoughts become louder. The modern world suddenly feels very far away. Even the air feels different beneath the heat of the Gulf sun. This is the side of Qeshm most tourists never see. Not landmarks, not attractions, just raw, untouched landscape. And perhaps that is what makes the island unforgettable. Because Qeshm does not constantly demand attention. It allows silence to speak instead. The island forces people to slow down, to observe, to listen, and in that silence, many visitors discover something unexpected, a strange emotional connection to the emptiness itself. But eventually, every journey across Qeshm leads back toward the sea, because the sea is where the story of this island truly begins and ends. Many young people dream of leaving isolated places in search of larger cities and easier lives. But on Qeshm, many families have remained here for generations. Despite the heat, despite the economic pressure, despite the isolation, because this island is part of who they are, the sea raised them, the desert shaped them, and the traditions of the island continue connecting entire communities together. Old fishermen still remember stories passed down by their grandfathers. Mothers still cook recipes that have survived for centuries. Village elders still gather every evening to talk beneath the cooling night air. Life here may appear difficult to outsiders, but for many locals, Qeshm represents something cities can never replace: belonging, identity, memory, and perhaps that human connection is the true soul of the island. Not the landscapes, not the caves, not the politics, but the people themselves, people who continue living beside one of the world's most tense waterways while protecting a way of life that the modern world slowly forgets. And as the sun finally disappears beyond the Persian Gulf, the island returns once again to silence. The same silence it has protected for centuries. Beyond these waters, empires continue rising and falling. Tankers continue crossing the horizon. Governments continue arguing. History continues moving forward. But here beneath the desert wind, Qeshm remains. Ancient, quiet, and watching, an island standing at the edge of the modern world. A place where silence still carries meaning. A place where the earth still feels untamed. And a place most people may never fully understand. Because Qeshm is not just an island, it is a feeling, a memory, a mystery floating beside the Strait of Hormuz. And long after leaving these shores, that mystery never fully disappears. For centuries, the waters surrounding Qeshm have carried more than trade. They have carried secrets. Because wherever borders, restrictions, and sanctions exist, smuggling follows closely behind. And across the Persian Gulf, entire underground economies quietly survive in the shadows. Small boats move through the darkness at night without lights. Hidden routes connect isolated coastlines across the region. Fuel, electronics, livestock, and countless other goods pass silently through these waters. Most outsiders never see this world, but on islands like Qeshm, whispers about it exist everywhere. The Gulf has always been a place of movement, a place where legal and illegal worlds often blur together beneath survival. For some families, smuggling became opportunity. For others, necessity. And although authorities patrol these waters constantly, the sea remains impossible to fully control, especially at night, especially among islands, coves, and hidden shorelines. No one openly talks about these networks for long, but their existence reveals another side of life beside the Strait of Hormuz, a side built on risk, uncertainty,